Bob Inskeep here once again, privileged to be part of the team working on this year's Outstanding Older Adult Awards in the Presbytery of New Hope. Exceptional and inspiring people. We had to cancel the ceremony last year, and we're certainly hoping that next year we'll get to return to that beautiful sanctuary, First Presbyterian Rocky Mount, the host church, where we can lift all 300 or 400 voices up to sing. Meanwhile, Reverend Andy James has taught us a lot about Zoom this year, and so today we'll Zoom the ceremony for a couple dozen or so honorees. And the whole presentation will be up next week on YouTube, so your friends and family wherever can tune in and see just that you really are outstanding and a good Christian. You have really inspired each of us. Privileged to work on this project once again. The Outstanding Older Adults of New Hope Presbytery. Bob Inskeep here in the Presbytery office on the campus of White Memorial Presbyterian in Raleigh. Sorry, I don't have my stole, but I do have my same Presbyterian tie. It is such a thrill for me to look at these pictures of you, real people that I've been studying about and working on for a couple of months now, along with Renee Baker and Andy James. One thing we did want to remind you is to stay here through the end. Not only are you going to hear some extraordinary stories about extraordinary people just like you, but there's going to be a group photo at the end that Andy wants to assemble. So please stick around for the group photo. And then next year, maybe we'll take it really as a group in the Rocky Mount. Welcome, and it is such an inspiration to me to see you all here today, to be honored as the Outstanding Older Adults of New Hope Presbytery.
What kind of superwoman does a church send to help lead worship and the music program when everything gets shut down and goes online? At First Presbyterian in Washington, they relied on one of their newer members, Laura Bardill, who drives to the church as often as needed all the way from Belhaven, about 30 miles each way. Fortunately, she has tons of experience from her years as a teacher and school principal before she and her husband, Bill, retired to Belhaven. One of her fellow elders says Laura is a godsend to our church and its members in so many ways. To list them would fill many pages. During this past year and more, so many church folk were downhearted not being able to go to church. But there was Laura bringing church to them online, perhaps delivering the message and singing solos, as always, in a service she put together. And so the word of God still flowed from the woman with the wonderful smile. And in the words of Reverend William Kinney, when the winds of dramatic change this past year forced Laura to the forefront of our leadership, together her many gifts, patience, thoughtfulness, hardworking spirit, dedication, wisdom, and love of God buoyed up a congregation that needed steady leadership, a good disciple, just like those early women disciples who witnessed the resurrection. Well, as the clerk of session says, Laura is simply priceless. Her kindness, care, and concern is endless, and she can be counted on for anything. I know it doesn't look like she's 60, but she just made it. What a stellar example of an outstanding older adult to lead off today's presentations. Laura Bardill of First Presbyterian Church, Washington.
What would it mean if you came to church one Sunday and the lights weren't on, the plumbing wasn't working, the lawn hadn't been mowed, nothing was working? Well, it would mean that you aren't at Spring Hill Presbyterian, where Robert Barnes is one of those godsends who can do anything and everything to keep the church facilities in top condition. During this time of COVID, Robert was instrumental in securing the electronic equipment needed for the church's curbside and hybrid services. And there was that one day no one will ever forget. There was a funeral at the church at 11 o'clock. And when Robert was opening the church that morning, he realized there had been a power surge nearby. Some of the church lights were out, the kitchen had flooded, the ice machine was out, and like many churches, Spring Hill was planning on serving lunch to the bereaved family after the service. Somehow, Robert got on the phone with the power company, and some volunteers came in to help mop up all the water, and everything went on as scheduled, including the lunch. Robert even made it to the funeral. You know, a man is really appreciated when the Presbyterian women give him an honorary lifetime membership. This is the church of his parents, and he has certainly honored the commandment to honor your father and mother. An outstanding older adult any church would be blessed to have. Robert Barnes, blessedly honored today by Spring Hill Presbyterian.
Dan and Sue Blackshear have been faithful members of Goldsboro First Presbyterian Church for the last 10 years. Dan has served as a deacon, elder, PNC committee member, IPNC member, and 3 years on the Presbytery's own Commission on Ministry. A sought-after church member for all of his leadership skills. He has served and often chaired the finance, building and grounds, and personnel committees. This past year during the pandemic, Dan headed up the committee to replace all the windows in the sanctuary, chapel, and gym. He was up to the task, and the church now has beautiful windows. Dan's skills as a successful businessman have been a tremendous asset to the church, and his love of Christ is apparent in all that he does. Sue Blackshear has also lived her faith. She's involved throughout the church, organizing meals and visits, sending cards to church members and their extended families in times of need. She's a current vital member of the Congregational Nurture Committee, always present and willing to lend her ideas, time, and energy to whatever project is at hand. In the past, Sue has served on the Chancel Guild, the Funeral Committee, and as co-chair of the Presbyterian Women's Nurturing Committee. Together, Dan and Sue have enhanced the First Presbyterian Church of Goldsboro in beautiful ways. They've welcomed church members into their home for fellowship. They're always planting pansies, tulips, or hydrangeas to greet people as they enter the portico of the church. Dan and Sue have been married 53 years, with 2 children and 4 grandchildren. But most importantly, for us at least, when there's a need at the church, they show up. Through mission work, committee, service, or Bible study, Dan and Sue Blackshear are there to serve the Lord with loving and cheerful generosity. Sue and Dan understand the gospel, and they live it every day.
Sandra Burt has been an elder at the Church of Reconciliation for 30 years and has done all the things a legendary church leader can do. But one thing she does is simply priceless, and it might be rare in a Presbyterian church. One of the present church members remembers moving to Chapel Hill 5 years ago and searching for a church. The couple thought the service that day was wonderful. Sandra probably sang one of her marvelous solos. But what blew them away was that after the service, Sandra came up to the couple with a warm welcome and a big hug, and the wreck is where the couple has stayed. Sandra's not only a legendary soloist, and she got the handbells started, and she's a good handbell player, but maybe where she produces the best harmony is when she leads the transition team searching for a new pastor. She really listens to others and works toward a group solution. And that's whether it's a committee or when she took that thankless job of being in charge of the church's photo directory. And of course, she patiently serves as clerk of session. Some adjectives her session used to describe her: inspiring, generous. Her contributions to the church are many and diverse. Thoughtful, committed, rarely exasperated by tedium, works joyfully, and a good listener. And they use the descriptors avid and talented in describing her prowess in the bowling alley and tournaments. And if you think she looks extra lovely, well, she is a Mary Kay consultant. She's wife to Willie and grandmother to 5. I imagine those grandchildren get lots of hugs from the lovely and loving Sandra Burt.
Linda and Dick Christensen were both active in the Presbyterian Church before moving to Raleigh and getting really active. They feel blessed to have had jobs that were their calling. Dick was an agriculture researcher working to increase food production, doing his small part to feed the world. Linda was a nurse, and she says that was her calling. Often, she felt it was a spiritual experience to provide gentle care for her hospital patients. That was her ministry. They must be volunteering for North Raleigh every day, because here's a list of ministries the Christensens are involved in: Food Bank, Habitat for Humanity, Note in the Pocket, North Raleigh Ministries Crisis Center, Special Olympics, and their church's annual yard sale. They began the bread ministry and the migrant workers collection. They participated in the mission trip to Costa Rica, and that's on top of serving as teachers and leaders and workers around the church itself. Their church think that people of all generations can see Linda and Dick Christensen as excellent role models, real faithful Christians demonstrating God's love for all God's children.
They say that Dan Cook's fingerprints are over all areas of church life at St. Andrew's. And Jesus' fingerprints must have been all over Dan as a young man, always in church with his parents and grandparents back in the mountains of North Carolina. His dad and his granddaddy both sang in a choir, and Dan must have got the gene because he was the only 13-year-old invited to sing in that church choir. And music has been a part of his life ever since. He's a talented member of the praise team, and he's helped search for music directors over the past 20 years. If you don't see him in church performing on Sunday, you can go see him in one of the church's community missions. Backpack Buddies, Rise Against Hunger, Faith Furnishings, Faith Crew, and he lends financial support to the youth and adult mission groups. And he's done all this while battling several severe health crises. He and Fairley have 2 sons and feel quite blessed. And St. Andrews feels blessed to have this man in their midst. They have seen that God's amazing grace and healing power have given him more than one chance to live a life that gives God the glory. Dan Cook, truly a man of faith.
Today we have folks representing every decade, the 60s, 70s, 80s, but Mildred Corbett is one of those who've been here 80 years and some, and still not tired. And she can take a day off if she likes, but she doesn't. She lives close by, and they call her if they need someone to unlock the building or receive a delivery. That was especially true any time that they were without a pastor. But she might be there anyway, taking her turn, cleaning the church, or at church working on one of their community witness projects. Of course, she's been an elder for almost forever and clerk of session. And when she was clerk, she assisted the committee during the first renovation of the original church building at William and Mary Hart. Mildred has 4 children who all grew up in Sunday school and youth groups, which she led at the time. She may long wear her PW pin as an honorary lifetime member, continuing to bear faithful witness to her Lord in the church and her family and her community. Mildred Corbett, joyfully nominated by her beloved church.
The gospel writer Luke must have been a prophet who could see that one day a person by the name Thomas Cordell Jr. would be the one to fulfill the Bible verse, "To whom much is given, much will be required." Howard Memorial testifies that Tom has always shared his God-given talents with his church, the town of Tarboro, and the region. When Tom, his wife, and 3 daughters moved to Tarboro and joined Howard Memorial in 1976, the church folks were blown away by his amazing career in business. And they frantically said, "We've got to get him in a leadership position right away before another company comes and recruits him away." And so he was a deacon and an elder and head of the finance committee. That may have been due to his background leading a variety of companies, making farm machinery, then a fabric company, and a fertilizer company. But Tom stayed. And so they gave him the biggest challenge they could think of. They put Tom in charge of their most ambitious project as a church, to build an upscale retirement community in downtown Tarboro. That probably used every ounce of his education from UNC and UVA, where he got his MBA. But he drove in. Where do you find a developer, a construction company, investors, decorators? Who will run the food service? Who will be director of the whole place? How do you establish a skilled nursing wing? Tom and Howard Memorial finally got there. You may have heard of that retirement home, the Albemarle. The fountains at the Albemarle, it opened in 1983. And all levels of care are included, now including memory care. Those astute members on the nominating committee back in 1976 sure spotted an amazing Christian to whom much is given. But they had no clue that he would keep giving to them for 45 years and still at it. But that's what's to be expected from a most gifted man of faith like Tom Cordell.
Moses had Bezalel when it was time to build the temple. Bezalel had been blessed by God with intelligence and knowledge in every kind of craft. Hillsboro Presbyterian is blessed with Joe Crane, who is skillful in any kind of craft, and as a bonus, he has a sense of humor. He's the resident joke teller. Joe did a children's sermon one time about how, humor, laughter is helpful in stressful times. And that day he made an offer to anybody who was feeling lonely or isolated during the pandemic to call him up for a joke to cheer them up. Joe's often the first person to go volunteer to help someone in need. He's led service trips to remote places in Tennessee and North Carolina to help fix up houses of people in great need. He doesn't waste any time thinking about who needs what. In his words, a need's a need. Let's go fill it. That might include helping some local citizens fight an injustice. In Hillsboro, he's out in front on weekend home rehabilitation projects through the Home Preservation Program of Orange County Habitat for Humanity, and he still helps build those habitat houses. If he's not doing that, you might find him out delivering food for the Orange congregations in mission, even during the pandemic. He can do plain old church stuff too, like serving on the session, being a youth leader, and even a volunteer in the nursery. I bet those infants and babies are giggling the whole time he's there. That he can do that all so energetically and with a smile is truly inspiring. Joe and his very patient and tolerant wife, Gail, have 2 children. The amazing and outstanding Joe Crane from Hillsboro.
Bob Dayton is the Outstanding Older Adult Award winner this year from the First Presbyterian Church of Greenville. Robert Guy Dayton Jr. was born in 1929 in Durham attended Broughton High School in Raleigh, made his way back to Durham to study at Duke and at Duke Medical School before jetting off with the Air Force to serve as a flight surgeon in Anchorage, Alaska. He was an OBGYN in Greenville for 35 years, where he's been a faithful member of First Presbyterian Church since 1962. He's been an elder, a deacon, and a trustee in multiple terms on each. He's chaired many committees of the church, encouraged support of missionaries, helped redevelop the men of the church, and been an avid supporter of scouting ministry. He's even been involved with 2 capital campaigns and building committees. He's been an elder mentor for youth in confirmation classes, traveled to Europe with the church choir, and joined his wife Yvonne in being a greeter at worship. In all of his life, he's known for his integrity and giving nature. Bob and his wife Yvonne have been married for 68 years. They have 6 children, 16 grandchildren, and 12 great-grandchildren. When he's not busy with all these other things, he loves to hunt, work in the yard, and attend Duke and ECU sporting events. An incredible man who's offered incredible service to the church, Bob Dayton from First Presbyterian Church in Greenville.
There is not a person at First Presbyterian Church here in Rocky Mount who doesn't know Ammon Edwards. And they see a beautiful reminder of her every time they walk into this sanctuary. Ammon and her husband were the impetus and driving force behind the purchase and installation of this beautiful tracker organ behind me. And with these magnificent gold pipes, you see the minute you walk in. The First Presbyterian Church music program is second to none, and Ammon has been actively supporting it all along. She's been an example of Christian living for decades, raising her family in the church environment. And along the way, she taught Sunday school and was active in Presbyterian women. Presbyterians are famous for our food events, and Ammon is right up front with her delicious food beautifully presented. The Bible cautions us in several places not just to talk about our faith, but to put it into action. Do faith. That's Ammon. She leads through example. Be in her company for a while, and you'll suddenly be a bit more gracious and open-minded to the world. And you might just see some of those others Jesus tells us to care for. She is outstanding. Ammon Edwards. Her attitude reflects God's love in all that she says and all that she does.
Stay
Cary Presbyterian Church's outstanding older adult will make the rest of us feel like slugs. How many of us were eager to adopt the technology and Zoom during the pandemic? This 84-year-old retired college professor and dean jumped right in because she is so driven to take care of those in need. Peg Giesbrecht has served in every official role there is since joining Cary Presbyterian Church in 1979. And even though she quarantined early as the pandemic's onslaught, she was connecting church members with Zoom, especially the older adults in the Abigail Circle. And she has Zoomed to do committee work, solve problems, or even take a class. This retired dean from Campbell University embraces learning for sure, and she has vision beyond, and so is a supporter of the church's mission work in Guatemala. She is a sponsor of the church's scholarship program. And on the subject of pastoral care, she's been a Stephen ministry leader for over 20 years, and she and her late husband, Francis, were instrumental in establishing the parish nurse program at Cary Pres. Caring for others at every turn, but still wanting to learn. One of Peg's favorite quotes is, church and worship should always comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. Peg surely heard the call of the prophet Isaiah. Comfort, O comfort my people, says your God. What a comfort it is to us all to know Peg Giesbrecht is still a most outstanding caregiver at Cary Presbyterian Church and beyond.
The folks at Ernest Myatt Presbyterian say Bob and Gail Green inspire them all to live a more Christ-like life. And when a church really needs lay leadership, here they are. When the church was suddenly without a pastor, Bob stepped up. He was already clerk of session and chair of the property committee. He added chair of the interim pastor nominating committee, which was very efficiently secured as an interim pastor. Now, during that time, Bob handled negotiations with the Department of Transportation, who wanted an easement across church property lines for a highway widening project. And several renovations got done during that time, including a new roof, window replacements, new gutters, and of course, some painting. Ernest Myatt is looking good, ready for folks to return. And Gail has kept pace. Her leadership includes being an elder leader of Presbyterian women and the Joy Group, and teaching, and constantly involved in pastoral care. Gail bakes cookies to take to those on their shepherd list. And she and Bob have even traveled to see members in assisted living facilities over an hour away. The church extends beyond the walls. Bob and Gail are out in the community forever. Cancer Society Relay for Life events in Garner. The church sells homemade ice cream as a fundraiser for cancer research. And the men of the church have an annual Thanksgiving Boston butt sale, and Bob oversees that. And the list goes on and on. What an amazing couple that does this work in the church and beyond to help spread the news showing Christ's love for all. Two exciting and outstanding older adult leaders that are honored today. With applause from Ernest Myatt Presbyterian Church, Bob and Gail Green.
Linda Helmkamp has always had a passion for the care of others, be they infants and children, Boy Scouts, older adults in the church, or people with dementia. It was only because their son was not being academically challenged in school that Linda and her husband moved to the Outer Banks. And when she got a warm welcome the first time she attended Outer Banks Presbyterian, she knew that was home for her. Because that's what she does. She reaches out to everyone. These days, she recruits new church members and others to be part of the Congregational Care Committee. For outreach, she's part of the care team on the long-term care and rehab facility at the Outer Banks. She brings donuts and her gregarious self to each weekly gathering of those folks in the long-term care and rehabilitation facility. Linda was always on the front lines of visiting the homebound and the sick, taking meals and whatever, but then this pandemic changed that into the card and call ministry. So folks are not forgotten, even if they're stuck at home. Linda is tireless in showing God's love for others. She probably doesn't think she deserves this award, but her fellow church folks surely do. Their unanimous choice for this honor was Linda Helmkamp.
Bethlehem Presbyterian Church in Rocky Mount is excited to send their outstanding older adult for 2021, Marshall Langley. Marshall's a lifelong Presbyterian. He was a member at his home church, Morton Memorial in Rocky Mount, before making his way to Bethlehem, where he's a dedicated session member, deacon, and clerk of session. Over the years, he's served on many committees and helps with activities of nearly every group in the church. He helps compile church and congregational information into the church directory. He exhibits great knowledge of the Book of Order, a man after my own heart, and ensures that in all he does and for all that he's responsible, the Book of Order is being followed. He has a servant's heart, shopping for food and helping organize and deliver Thanksgiving baskets for families in the area. He delivers donations to the local shelter to feed the hungry and supports Bethlehem's Meals on Wheels team. Marshall loves his family and enjoys spending time with them. He's a gentle, kind, and considerate man. On any given day, you can find him delivering meals to friends, or taking them out to eat, or driving them to appointments. He enjoys working and spending time in his yard. He has a love for music and is these days helping a friend in the church learn to play the piano. Marshall Langley, an incredible servant of God, a lover of his family and of the church. We, in the Presbytery of New Hope, and especially at Bethlehem Church, are thankful for Marshall's leadership and recognize him as an outstanding older adult.
Before Cornerstone was ever a church, Marcia Marvin was serving as a medical missionary in the Congo in the 60s, trained nurse that she is. Upon returning to the States, she ended up with Presbyterians in Louisville, Kentucky, where she was ordained as an elder, serving in that capacity several times over 3 decades. Finally, Cornerstone was ready for Marcia and her late husband, Oscar, and here she came to serve on the session and help Cornerstone with their mission projects. And she participated in the women's Bible study, church hospitality, and anything else she might be asked to do. One of her lifetime wishes was to visit the Holy Lands, and somehow she and a group from Cornerstone were able to do that in October 2019. And it's not exactly a church, but there are lots of active Presbyterians at the place Marcia now calls home, Glen Eyre. And now that the restrictions from the pandemic are easing up, Marcia can't wait to get back up to full speed, helping others wherever she is. She's been an outstanding adult for a long time. Marcia Marvin.
It would be worth taking the time to read the entire bio of Ruth Miller Osley in the award booklet, which is online. You'll see how a young girl enjoyed hunting and fishing with her father, who also taught her auto repair. Then she learned how to trap muskrat and mink and get honey from beehives. Ruby took piano lessons, but despite all that, her mother won the day by teaching her to be a seamstress. And so for decades, Ruby taught home economics and dress design to middle and high school students, to adults of all ages through the North Carolina Agricultural Extension Division. She taught textiles, tailoring, and even dress design at what is now St. Andrew's Presbyterian College and later at Meredith. As an elder at First Presbyterian in Garner, she was the catalyst in initiating a Christmas Eve service. I'm thinking Mary had the best dress ever. And now as a deacon, she's improving what they do through the shepherds groups. And of course, going back to her heritage, she still plays piano, organ, handbells, and even sings in the choir. And if any muskrats get loose in Garner, Ruby will be the one to catch them. Ruby's first husband, Don, died in 1988. He had been a minister and then a school principal, a fellow educator. Several years later, she married Clint Osley, who was also a high school principal, a kind and wise educator. So she has 2 surnames, but she can do more than a dozen people. Garner's Presbyterian's outstanding older adult, Ruby Miller Osley.
This year, our presbytery became a Matthew 25 presbytery. Lots of churches are now trying to put what they believe into action. As when Jesus says, "I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. You tended to me when I needed clothing, when I was sick, a stranger." In this past year, many church folks have felt as if they were in prison, locked in their home, lonely. But never fear, Whit Morgan is here to organize a weekly phone tree, to check on the congregation, and to make you smile. As Whit likes to say, God loves you, Bob, and so do we. And so the church visited those locked up at home by way of their phone calls. He's been a ruling elder and served on just about every committee since 1978. He's been active in the choir and the men's fellowship and served not only teach Sunday school, but to serve as the superintendent. Most recently, he's been fundamental in developing West Newbern's weekly prayer circle. Don't worry, he can handle many tasks at once. Whit was an air traffic controller, now running his own real estate agency. And he's active out in the community with hospice and home place senior living community, among others. Whit is married, well married to the church, and to Pat Morgan. I presume Pat already knew what our presbytery does, that Whit is truly outstanding.
Ronnie Knoll was picked by the session of this very church, St. Andrew's Presbyterian in Henderson, to be our outstanding older adult last year. But then when the ceremony got canceled, well, it's given him a whole year to bask in the glory of being our outstanding older adult, and we've had about 5 already out of this church. Ronnie was known by everybody in Henderson as the manager of the big J.C. Penney store downtown for about 40 years. I went in one day a couple years ago to buy some slacks or a belt or something, and I told the clerks, I'd go to the same church as Ronnie Knoll. And they just launched into what a wonderful man he was, how great it was to work for him. I had not told them I was a minister, so they could have said anything they wanted. Ronnie retired from that long-time job a couple years ago and picked up a very small part-time job, co-host of the sports talk show on WIZS radio here in Henderson. Now, Ronnie knows sports, could always talk about sports. He likes to talk about the church softball team years ago. He played on that, and he told me, and if you played on the team, you were expected to come to church. But his real love is high school sports. He went to all his son's Ray's games over the year, and Ray is now a coach at Granville Central. And Ronnie can talk on the radio or here in church. He likes to do the sermon. He gets invited to preach a couple times a year, and he said he kind of enjoys putting his thoughts together during the week and getting up here and preaching. When the church had a choir, he sang up here with the choir and with a gospel group called the St. Andrew's Five. Of course, he's been deacon, elder, clerk. He's always serving this church where he brought his wife Becky here right after they got married at her Baptist church. And they've been faithful members here ever since. And we're glad. Ronnie Knoll, our outstanding older adult. Our next honoree is also very familiar with the pulpit. I first met Rebecca Austin Odell when she was in the lay pastor program learning how to preach, which she did very well. I figured she had already done everything that a human could do on the pew side of the pulpit. There was just one thing to learn other than how to run the cemetery, which she also does. She's done everything a church person can do. Teach, recruit teachers, cook, serve, PW, child care, manage the prayer chain, sing in the choir, and oversee Operation Christmas Child with her husband. People in the community know Rebecca. They see her out there feeding the hungry and helping neighbors. She's active in Presbyterian Disaster Assistance and Children's Hope Alliance. Rebecca went on mission trips to Haiti and New Orleans. I'm sure that her minister, Catherine Mooney, knows that people don't know what a minister does, all the things we do during the week other than the sermon. But it must be humbling for her to know that Rebecca Odell can do 1,000 things during the week and still get up on Sunday and preach a really good sermon. Makes me tired. It's hard to find a more amazing Presbyterian than Rebecca Austin Odell. Praised, honored, and appreciated by Unity Presbyterian in Newton Grove.
You know you're a very good church member when the church secretary says she just loves being around you. And because of you, she doesn't have to worry about some things. Mount Olive's secretary, Anna Andrews, says, Linda Roten is a sweetheart. I really like her. She's so kind and compassionate. And one of the jobs she looks after is ordering all the special bulletins for the various times in the church year. And if the Easter lilies are delivered at 6 a.m., Linda will be at the church to receive them and set them out in the sanctuary. Linda started off at Baker Presbyterian before the churches merged. For her whole life, she's been active in church, teaching Sunday school, filling in as pianist when needed, and of course serving as an elder. She works with the children in Bible school and Logos, which has been offered at Mount Olive for 20 years. And part of Logos at Mount Olive includes a nutritional dinner where the kids learn about manners too. And no doubt, always have pickles on the table. Her kind heart was on display when her great niece died, and Linda became a surrogate grandmother to young Kimber. Now 11, Kimber gets chauffeured to her dance lessons and other activities, even weekend-long dance conferences. Her fellow church folks say that Linda exhibits the servant attitude that Christ calls us to live. She certainly teaches by word and deed. Linda Roten, a true Christian at Mount Olive Presbyterian Church.
Not every church is blessed with such a happy handyman as Bill Smith. In addition to serving as deacon, usher, sound technician, and on the kitchen and facilities committees, he's always at church fixing something, bringing along his beloved grandchildren as helpers. They say Bill goes after any task with enthusiasm and optimism. Someone once said that if Bill was going after Moby Dick in a canoe, he would take some tartar sauce with him. Bill's there every Sunday, running the sound system and greeting people, passing out hearing devices to those who appreciate them. And as for being a handyman extraordinaire, that doesn't quite describe all he does, from changing the church's safety lighting inside and out, fixing toilets, repairing things. And for years, he kept their aging boiler going long past its allotted life. And if not doing one of his 100 jobs around the church, he picks up the phone to call a member or staff person just to say, "I'm checking on you." Bill is known for his many acts of kindness. Bill and Clara have 2 sons, 4 grandchildren, and 6 great-grandchildren who all think he is grand. Bill Smith, a very outstanding older adult from First Pres Kinston, and still going strong as he heads toward his 88th birthday.
Carolyn Snipes is this year's outstanding older adult from Cotton Memorial Presbyterian Church in Henderson. Carolyn's a 5th-generation Presbyterian. She's done incredible work with the children and youth of Cotton Memorial Church. She moderates the Christian education ministry, directs Vacation Bible School, and coordinates a summer camp, Camp Cotton, over the past decade for the children and youth of Henderson and Vance County. Even last year during the pandemic, Carolyn led the volunteers of Cotton Memorial for 4 weeks of virtual VBS and Camp Cotton, culminating in a virtual block party with school supply book bag distribution the week before school started. She also volunteered with a special food program last summer to deliver food 5 days a week to children and seniors. And she's been an instrumental part of making sure that this continues into the coming summer. She's also a member of Cotton Memorial's mission team as they've supported families in need in the pandemic season. She's been in the community delivering personal protective equipment, school supplies, church literature, and so much more to members and friends of Cotton Church. Carolyn's a retired educator and a dedicated substitute science teacher for Durham Public Schools as she continues to inspire students to learn. Carolyn is married to Archie, and they have 2 daughters and 2 grandchildren. This year's outstanding older adult, truly a great servant of God, Carolyn Snipes.
This couple certainly has to be honored together. Ralph and Harleen Teal have gone full speed in all kinds of church work since they joined New Hope in the mid-1990s. Harleen is often working behind the scenes. For instance, on the Compassionate Care Committee, she often visits the homebound or those in the hospital, showing up with her cheery self and usually food. Harleen is also the one to greet visitors on Sunday. She helps them find a seat, introduces them to other members that are seated nearby, and remembers to check on them at the end of service and invites them back. Every church longs for a warm, welcoming Harleen. Harleen is right there with Ralph on the Adult Fellowship Committee and supporting the New Hope Camp and Conference Center fundraisers. And speaking of fundraising, now we get to Ralph. He's a leader in church on the session, on several committees, including finance, during a time of many renovations and special projects. And Ralph Teal is the chair of the trustees. And when they decided that they needed to expand the space for burials on the church grounds with a columbarium, he led the effort to meet with architects to do a feasibility study and more. And 5 years ago, construction began. Today, the columbarium is a beautiful reality. It fits perfectly into the church's landscape. Now that's done, and Ralph can get back to ushering with Harleen this Sunday. A personable, proficient, and quite pleasing Presbyterian couple, Harleen and Ralph Teal from New Hope Presbyterian.
My name is Chris Tuttle, and I'm one of the pastors at Westminster Presbyterian Church here in Durham, and I'm excited to introduce to you our outstanding older adult this year, Muff Urbanek. Muff is an absolute joy, her smile lighting up a room, overwhelming in her welcome to all, particularly our youngest disciples. Muff came to Durham to pursue nursing and stayed on over the years at the bedside and in management, along with some teaching. Her husband, Jim, a now mostly retired orthopedic surgeon, and their 2 young children joined Westminster. It was before we had a Christian educator even, and our pastor at the time, Haywood Holderness, soon pulled Muff into teaching, and they'd write the lessons together each week. She's been teaching a 4- and 5-year-old saints in church school on Sunday mornings for 42 years, which is its own amazing thing. Generations of children learned from Muff's passion for the Bible, for sharing God's love, and for making the stories of Jesus come alive. Her longevity and commitment are an amazing thing. A handful of times over the years, we have had young adults who've long moved away, come back to church, and the first thing they do is they go downstairs to find Muff. Even in this pandemic year, she's jumped on Zoom and stayed connected, which is a gift to us all, to these young disciples, and to Muff too. She soon added 2 other teachers to the team, and those 3 have taught together for more than 30 years, keeping the promises we make around this font. While Muff's mark on young children here at the church, just in those classes, is enough, she's served in so many ways throughout the church and community, sharing her love and wisdom and generosity of spirit as a nurse at Westminster, advocating for children in Durham, working with organizations that help educate families and prevent child abuse. She served as president of statewide Prevent Child Abuse NC. She was part of the leadership team that helped create Welcome Baby, an organization that helps meet new mothers and provide support, a program that was so successful the county kind of pulled it into their apparatus and replicated and expanded it. She's also, for 25 years, helped raise money for the Center for Child and Family Health. They named their mental health clinic after her in 2016. She is a gift to us all, and I thank God for our 2021 outstanding older adult, Muff Urbanek.
When an earnestly seeking Presbyterian comes to worship, she or he is eager to hear the Word of God, the Word read, the Word proclaimed. But when the Scripture reader's mic isn't on, or someone's mic is too loud, or the hearing assist devices are malfunctioning, it can be a distraction. Victor Van Nortwick does not let such unprofessional things happen in his church. At his soundboard at Beargrass, which he installs and maintains and operates, he wants the preacher to sound good because Victor's sometimes the preacher. And they pay attention to Victor not just because they can hear him, but because he's got a great sense of humor. And he studies hard. Both those attributes are greatly appreciated in the adult Sunday school class he teaches, and even when he serves on the session as elder and or clerk. Beargrass is a small church, but Victor Van Nortwick is a big leader. His humor and his commitment to excellence have been on display for years, not just in the church, but when he worked for the Department of Agriculture, or these days when he's out kayaking or disc golfing with friends. Beargrass Presbyterian is proud to honor Victor Van Nortwick, and that's no joke.
Our next honoree hails originally from New Bern and made his way to Durham via Long Island, New York. Outstanding older adult from Covenant Presbyterian Church, Otto White, Jr. Otto attended the University of North Carolina before making his way to Long Island, where he finally found the Presbyterian Church, and for that we're grateful. All along the way in his life, he's been an active church member and musician. at Covenant Church in Durham. He served on the session, the stewardship committee, the men's council, and in so many other ways in the life of the church. He's participated in Moral Monday gatherings in the Durham community and served as a founding member and program director for Durham's Invest in Kids mentoring program to assist adolescent Black boys in the neighborhood around Covenant Church. But the ministries that Otto participates in are not limited by age. His presence has been notable in the Covenant family for the last 17 years, but he's used his talents and gifts to serve the needs of people of all ages in God's kingdom here on earth. He's married to his wife, Gladys, and they have 2 grandchildren and 1 granddaughter. And we're grateful that they've shared this incredible servant, Otto White, with Covenant Church, New Hope Presbytery, and the Church of Jesus Christ.
Can you imagine being a member of a church for 45 years, and every time something broke, they called you? Don Williford is one of those members who seems to know the working details of almost everything at the church. And he's been involved in every aspect of church leadership: deacon, elder, property committee. Don serves on the cemetery committee and is well suited for dealing with families as they make those tough, final decisions. They say a gardener really knows God because they spend so much time on their knees, and Don gardens a lot and brings in the flowers and vegetables to share with the whole congregation at Oakland Presbyterian Church. And if Don and his wife Mary are going to visit someone, a bouquet of roses is probably going along as well. One project close to his heart is the Golfing for Jessica fundraiser. For over 10 years, that golf tournament has raised money for the church member with cerebral palsy. She's been supplied with 3 handicap accessible vans. And if there's a fellowship dinner, Don and Mary are usually the coordinators and the servers. Oakland says that Don is the model of a true servant. In the words of Matthew 23:11, "The greatest among you shall be your servant." Don Williford has been, and still is, a good and faithful servant of the Lord.
Westminster Presbyterian in Lucama may seem much bigger than its small membership size due to one outstanding member, Debbie Moore Wilson. More than once it's been said, every church should have a Debbie Wilson. She's right in the center of everything, being clerk of session and often Westminster's commissioner to the presbytery meetings. When their pastor is away, Debbie is the one to assist and supply preacher leading worship. Debbie helped the church meet the pandemic restrictions. There were some Sundays when they couldn't meet, but then she helped arrange for the church to meet outdoors. And when they came back inside, she made sure all of the protective protections were in place. 2 years ago, the church celebrated their 70th anniversary, and Debbie took on the monumental task of going through all their records to compile a complete roster of all former members and pastors, living and deceased. She's a good historical researcher. The 70th anniversary was a grand event. The Presbytery's Ted Churn was there to make it even grander. And Ted would have been at ease, especially because his host and colleague, Debbie, had this pleasant, engaging personality that makes people feel important and at ease. She's a good listener and a very, very compassionate person. When the pastor's wife died, Debbie helped him write all of the acknowledgement cards and to sort out his wife's clothing and such to take to local agencies who could put it to better use. Westminster says that with joy and seriousness, Debbie obeys our Lord's command, love each other as I have loved you, John 15:12. Your church may be blessed with a Debbie Wilson, but Westminster has the original.
If you don't know about Bill and Ada Winters, you're about to learn. And that's what they're all about, teaching and learning. Bill's learning included Army intelligence, undergrad at UNC, and then a Master of Divinity from Union Presbyterian Seminary. Over time, Bill was involved in churches in Virginia and North Carolina as a chaplain in Charlotte and in all kinds of things at West Raleigh Presbyterian. Ada's University of Kentucky education prepared her to be an educator of just about all age groups, teaching everything from piano to Bible Jeopardy for the young ones. They say Ada's a natural teacher and leader inside and outside the classroom. She's taught elementary school in Kentucky, taught piano and music in Wake County schools, and most recently served as a proctor for GED students at Wake Tech. And when she's not teaching, she might be singing jazz. At the church, Ada has taught everything from vacation Bible school to officer training. She's served on a variety of committees, including the pastor nominating committee, and she pitches in with the kitchen brigade. She has a heart for ministry and for caregiving, so she's a Stephen minister. She's been one for almost 20 years, and that is fueled by her faith and her deep empathy. She can perfectly relate to those who have lost a family member, having endured the loss of her son, Steve. West Raleigh describes Ada and Bill both as being faithful and nurturing, strong in faith and grace, good, steadfast leaders, outstanding members of an outstanding church. Bill and Ada Winters of West Raleigh Presbyterian.
Last but very certainly not least, we bring you two very special honorees on behalf of the Presbytery staff and the entire Presbytery, the Reverends Ted and Moffat Churn. Ted and Moffat have served our Presbytery in various roles since their arrival in our midst in 2007. But their history of ministry and service is full and lifelong.
Moffat Swain Churn is a North Carolina native who has served as an associate pastor, co-pastor, solo pastor, seminary staff, and evangelist on Presbytery staff. In New Hope Presbytery, she has served on the Exams and Transfers Subcommission and helped organize the Human Trafficking Roundtable. In all these roles, Moffat has been a gifted teacher and mentor, bringing her love for God and God's people to the forefront as she has lived out her call.
Theodore E. Churn is a Baltimore native who has served as a pastor, co-pastor, interim associate pastor, and executive presbyter and stated clerk. As executive presbyter and stated clerk of New Hope Presbytery, Ted guided the presbytery through a time of transition and discernment for the future, culminating in the Pentecost Project that established a new mission, vision, and staffing structure for the presbytery.
Moffat retired from active work in ministry in 2014, followed by Ted in 2021. They plan to continue nurturing their love of the beach and their family as they spend time with their children, Kate, Todd, and their granddaughter, Zoe, and new grandson, Owen.
We hope you will join us in congratulating Moffat and Ted for being outstanding older adults in their service to New Hope Presbytery, the Presbyterian Church USA, and all of God's people. Thank you, Ted and Moffat, and best wishes to both of you in your full retirement.
Wow, this has been a thrill to see you people live and in person, not in person, but live on your cameras and things. People that I've been reading about and helping to helping to boil down the things that your church has sent in, which is one reason you need to read the church, this little booklet that Renee sent you, because there's a lot more in there. We had to shorten it a little bit so we wouldn't be here till Tuesday. Speaking of Tuesday, the YouTube should be up by Tuesday, and you could tell your relatives from wherever to tune this thing in, and they'll see that you really are a pretty sensational person. And you're part of a sensational group, which is another reason for you to read through this booklet that Renee sent you. You should have already gotten it in the mail, or if not, it's online, and you will be getting it. It's not just that your session voted for you to represent your church as an outstanding Christian, but you're part of one sensational group. Andy said, counting the couples and everything, it's about 36 people in the Presbytery of New Hope. So congratulations to you. And speaking of this booklet, how did this booklet get to be? How did this whole presentation get to be? There's a great detail person at the Presbytery office. Her name is Renee Baker.
Hello, everyone, and congratulations to all of you nominees. I really, really thoroughly enjoyed listening and reading about all of your accomplishments. This was so great to be able to do this by Zoom this year. We really miss meeting with you in person. We hope that next year we will be back in person and we can have that fellowship and all that good food that we've had from years before, and also that famous lemonade that I make. So prepare your taste buds for a tasty treat next year. Congratulations, everyone.
First Presbyterian Rocky Matt is looking forward to having us back. And thanks to Matt Baker for all he did on that.